So sustainability gives us a tremendous challenge today. Why is that so? That's because we are facing a crisis situation of unprecedented magnitude. Some people say that around the year of 2050, technological civilization as we know it might collapse. Obviously, that's an incredible challenge. And in order to meet this challenge, to prevent this from happening, we should have an unprecedented degree of human cooperation. I am Eörs Szathmáry. I am a professor of evolutionary biology, mostly interested in the question how higher levels of organizations arose throughout the almost 4 billion years of biological evolution, such as cells from molecules, organisms from cells, animal societies from organisms, and finally, human societies who are using language for communication. So if we go deeper into the problem, then of course there is a whole list. So let's single out a few of them. One of them is obvious: climate change. What is not so obvious, is not so very well known, is that there is a formidable component of the climate change phenomenon, and that is called the tipping points. What does that mean? That means that if you change one parameter of the system, for example, you are pumping carbon dioxide into the air continuously, that changes the stability properties of the Earth system, as we call it. Now that means that the system can flip into a new state, and the stability conditions have changed to such an extent that there is no way back anymore. This is why the phenomenon is called tipping point. And scientists have identified a good number of such tipping points that are threatening us. Actually, one might be over one of the particular tipping points, and that's not good news, I know, and that's the melting of the ice sheet on Greenland. It might be that we are over the tipping point, and that means that even if we were to stop carbon dioxide emission just now, instantaneously, the melting would still continue until the whole ice sheet melts away. That also means that, unfortunately, you cannot reverse climate change. You can mitigate its effect, and this mitigation requires global cooperation. Now, climate change has some other adverse consequences that are not so very well known, and I think a special threat is the emerging infectious diseases. Why is that so? That is because the climate is changing, and many carriers of viruses, bacteria, and other infectious agents are not, for example, dying over the winter, because the winter is not cold anymore. Now that means that they are going to survive till the next vegetation season, and they can increase in the population number. If the population number increases, then the likelihood of meeting the potential hosts is increasing. And that will cause a tremendous burden, not only in terms of human death, but also in expenses. Scientists at Harvard have calculated the price of just the COVID epidemic, which honestly was not the most severe that you can imagine. But they have calculated that for the US, the price was $1 trillion. Now imagine if you have several epidemics going on the same time. You can actually calculate that there is a point of the incidence of people being sick, after which the whole economy crumbles. And since we have a global economy, that means that the global economy crumbles. So that's a challenge that we have to meet somehow. And the third one cuts right into the flesh of our cherished economical system, which is called capitalism. Capitalism was a brilliant idea for a long time, especially during the times when the globe seemed infinitely large and you could dump your waste on somebody else. Now we have realized that the globe is much smaller than we imagined or that we felt, And this led to the problem of our ecological footprint. It's a direct consequence of our economy. The ecological footprint means, how much territory you need in order to sustain yourself. For the human population, globally speaking, now we are at 150% of the Earth. So ideally, at the moment, you would need one Earth and one half more in order to sustain what you are doing for business as usual. The point is that even an idiot would realize that there is no business as usual anymore here, right? You cannot create, one half other Earth. You could think of colonizing Mars, but Mars is very inhospitable, so we have to solve your problem here locally. So what can you do? One of the things is that you have to realize that these things are complex, very complex, and we don't like that. Complex problems usually cannot be answered by one-bit answers, very simple answers, oversimple answers. In order to deal with complexity, you need tools, so you have to develop the tools in order to master complexity. That's one of the lines that I recommend that we should be doing. If you think about such a concrete challenge as the emerging infectious diseases, I have good news. We have a plan. So it's called the DAMA protocol. It's document, assess, monitor, act. And this boils down to something which is well known for individual medicine. Prevention is better than cure. Now, this idea has not been applied to epidemics yet. When we are dealing everywhere in every country with epidemics, we are just reacting. We are not proactive, but we have a plan for being proactive. Certainly, it would cost a lot of money, but it would be much less than $1 trillion per epidemic. So working out and implementing this is one of the major goals that we have to fulfill. And the third one is that we have to change certain things in the capitalist system, because it's simply unsustainable, and it's not against sustainability, it's against actually survival. That's an even stronger statement. So just to give you a very simple example, the planned obsolescence, as it is called, that means that even though you could manufacture something which would last for 30 years without any problems, you would get to a product which lasts instead only for 5 years, and you are forced to throw it away and buy a new one. That is incredibly wasteful and completely unsustainable. How you manage things, again, require complex thinking. Let me tell you another example. People are eagerly waiting for cold fusion, or anything that gives you fusion-type energy. Yes, it would be terrific because it would help reduce the carbon dioxide production immediately, right? But it would elicit an incredible demand and an incredible production because energy is now cheap. So it would ruin the rest of the biosphere. So this is why I'm saying you have to think in systems, because one single answer to one single question will generate more harm than the problem that it solves. And if you reflect on the economy as a science, economics, also you have to modify something deeply. Somebody famously said, classical economics works under the assumption that you are dealing with a bunch of sociopaths, just maximizing their individual profit. And that denies everything that we know about the last 5 million years of the evolution of the hominin lineage, that from something like a chimpanzee led to us. And because we have been evolving in small groups for 5 million years, where if you were to maximize only your individual profit, you would just die in that society. So cooperation has been foundational, and that has to go into the textbooks and has to go into the economic practices. You see, the special challenge with all that is not that we are unable, or we would be unable, or too stupid to implement certain changes, but there is not much time. We must really hurry up.